Hello, welcome to Prospects to Pros. I am Nate Tice, your host today. We have the Combine invites to go over. It is February. We're after the Super Bowl. We're right into the Combine. This is what the great thing about having 18 weeks. They say great things. Now there's only 2 weeks from the Super Bowl to the Combine. Everybody involved in the league really loves it. But to help me go over the Combine invites and over his special new top 100 big board is the athletics draft expert, the Mr. Beast himself, Dane Brugler. How are you doing today, Dane? Great to see you, by the way. We took a little break, so it's great to have you back and great to see your face.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. I felt like I was in Vegas with you guys. You and Robert just crushed it. Everyone else on the podcast feed did great. I mean, it was a lot of fun to follow along with you guys. How was it? Did you enjoy? I mean, it's your home base, but you weren't on the road, but you had the home field advantage. So that kind of played into it. How'd the week go for you?
It did. I had a little cold last week, and then now I am over the cold, but then now exhausted from the Super Bowl week. Yeah, the home field advantage definitely does matter, though. At first, I thought it wasn't, because we have a 1-year-old, and it's like, all right, I'm not going to get to sleep, but I'm so used to that anyways, even if I'm out like a little later than I usually am. I was pretty good the whole week, actually, though. But the thing is every night I get to go to my bed, my pillow, my hand-selected Zoma pillow, and we're not sponsored by a pillow company, so we're good. And then, but also in the bed that we love that we got from Costco, and every night got to wake up to my coffee, my snacks, my breakfast. So over the 8 days, as I saw everybody else wither away, I think I hit my second wind as the week went along. So it was fantastic, though. Thank you so much for the compliments. That text you sent us was really sweet of you, so I really appreciate that. By the way,
that's such an advantage. I mean, just like going. One reason I love the Combine is I can drive there and I don't have to worry about flights, and I can bring my own stuff with me, and so like that right there feels like an advantage for me. But to have it in your home city, that's got to be. Make the week go by just a little bit better. But to your point, we're full steam ahead now to the 2024 NFL Draft. All 32 teams, and I think it's interesting this time of year. This is when the actual draft boards start to really take shape for teams, and it's kind of like long story short, and every team's a little different, but most teams starting last week, once you get past East-West Shrine, once you get past the Senior Bowl, they do all their cross checks there. That's when the scouts, everybody, they return to home base, they return to team headquarters, and they go through draft meetings. And it's really an interesting process for them because they go prospect by prospect. Area scouts present a player, they watch tape, the room deliberates, and this is the process of building the draft board. And that's happening right now as we speak, last week, this week, up until the Combine. Because as an organization, and Nate, I know you know this really well from your time in the league, you want an idea of how your draft board is shaping up going into the Combine. You want to have some level of expectations for these guys going to Indianapolis, because if they exceed or maybe they fall short, then you can go back and maybe figure out what did we miss during the process. But I'd always say the Combine's one big cross-checking exercise, but it's an interesting point in the calendar where teams are really busy right now, even though, it feels like, okay, Super Bowl's done. Whew, all right, season's over. Teams are hard at work day to night doing these draft meetings right now.
Yeah, and I always think one of the most fascinating things to me is how teams do break up the area, like the country area, and then break up the positions. And because that will be one of the cross checks as well, depending on the team. But they'll have the Southeast scouts also in charge of wide receivers. And so they're the cross check of that. They watch all the certain guys above a certain grade, or they might watch all of them that are available. So then you get into that. And like you say, there's more eyeballs on them. I think some of these area scouts, and I know is that you will hear, you talk to a guy and they go, oh, that guy's not my state. And it's like, oh, it's just a state over. And you think that's wild. Don't you watch college football? But these guys are so locked in on their guys because they have to be. There's so many that they have to sift through. But I think also, too, is now you get coaches involved. As you get leaning up to the Combine, those guys start getting a list as well. I've had the privilege of being on both sides. Is now really good teams will now start getting these kind of cross points. Okay, we're going to put together 8 guys or 10 guys or 12 guys. We want this coach to watch them. And we want to get his opinion. We want to put together an interview list if that guy is at the Combine, especially as well. We want this. Well, this coach is really good at prying this information out, so we want to make sure he's in the interview for this guy. That process starts kind of coming together because, again, they only have 2 weeks and those invites just came out. Those official invites came out now. So that process is interesting too, especially with all the coaching changes. This is all quick. And so this is going to be, it's one step of process. What's behind closed doors, it's a bunch of ducks on a pond right now. But it's just so interesting as more data points, more eyeballs get on these guys, then, like you say, more opinions get presented, more stacking of guys starts to happen, and more guys talk. And I think it's just a very interesting process as it's only starting to ramp up too as we get to
no doubt. And to your point about the how the area scouts, how it's broken up, and it's interesting because I'll be texting with a scout and we're talking about a pass rusher, and maybe he's a Southeast scout. And, he's watching a Georgia pass rusher, and he's going up against this Missouri offensive tackle, but I don't have Missouri. So I have no idea if this Missouri offensive tackle is any good. And so he's asking me, hey, is this guy, he's stopping my pass rusher. Is he any good? And so, it's interesting how that works. But then, like you were saying, when these teams go to all-star games, the area scouts will have different positions that they're in charge of. So, the West Coast scout has to be looking at the linebackers, and they do all this. So when you get to these draft meetings that are going on right now, it's not just one expert trying to sell the room on a player. You've got your national guys, you've got your the cross checks from the All-Star games and all these things that you can have a more cohesive discussion and really break the player apart. So it's so fascinating how these boards get built, and it's up to the area scout to whittle down, because you're not deliberating on 500 players. It's a more confined list based off of what fits your scheme, your culture. And so it's up to the area scouts to really narrow it down. Who are the guys we should be looking at? So it's a fascinating process.
By the time those final meetings will happen over the next couple of weeks and everything after the combine, some of these guys will have a grade from an area scout, a regional scout, East or West, a national scout, they'll have the positional scout, they'll have the positional coach, coordinator, sometimes the head coach, sometimes the director of player personnel, then the college director. Then sometimes they might even get a pro scout involved, like just because, hey, this guy's really good with offensive line, let's get this guy in here. Some of these guys will have 10 grades on them by the time it's all said and done. Some are weighted, of course, more than others. This is what the GM has to decide. Whoever makes these picks is okay, if we have 10 and it's universal, okay, this is great. But sometimes, all right, well, are we into groupthink right now? Okay, so then that process becomes a whole thing. Yeah, so I always just think it's fascinating by some of these guys get eyeballs. I also love the ramp up process. Like you said, the All-Star game might bring an attention to some of these guys, and then it just goes, okay, we got to get more eyes on this and make sure. And we're going to be talking about a few of them right here with the on your big board, because I noticed quite a few of those Senior Bowl standouts were on this list, and I agree with quite a few of them as well. But no, this is just such an interesting process, and we are what feels like step 2 of it for the next couple of weeks, because like I said, combine's in a couple of weeks. Oh, speaking of combine, the invites happened today.
321 officially, and that's I went through the list. I didn't think there were any major snubs. I mean, usually there's one or two that really are surprising. This year, I don't think we really had that. I mean, there were a few guys I wish could be there. Christian Boyd, the Northern Iowa defensive tackle, who had a great week at Shrine practices over in Frisco. No invite for him. I know scouts weren't super high on him during the week or during the season, but later in the year, and then especially in All-Star season, he really helped himself. I mean, he's getting drafted. So, I mean, every year there are between 30 and 35 non-combine guys that get drafted. Boyd will be one of them. And, just perfect example, look at last year. 2 guys that were at the Shrine game, Kobe Turner, Broderick Martin, those guys weren't invited to the combine. Turned out okay for both. Turner was, with the Rams, had a great rookie season. I think he led all rookies in sacks. Yeah. And then Martin was one of the first non-combine guys drafted, late 3rd round by the Lions. So, both those guys were surprised weren't invited, but it's not the be all end all for them. But I thought I got a lot of questions on Twitter about how does the process work in terms of voting and who gets an invite, and so. Thought we'd delve into that a little bit, and because it is a really fascinating thing. And so this process has changed over the years. I think there have been maybe some changes to this, but this is to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah.
Basically, there is a committee and a voting process. The committee is made up of all 32 teams plus National and Blusto, the two main scouting services. They also play a part in this. Most of the time, it's directors with the team that are kind of doing the voting for each team. Sometimes it's a GM, but not always. Sometimes it's a scout. Sometimes it's whoever the GM trusts do the voting for that team. And they used to do this in person, but they made it into an online portal. So there's hundreds and hundreds of names in this portal. You're basically voting yes or no. And it's kind of a long process, obviously, because there's a lot of names to go through. That's the first round of voting. So basically, it's the top X% at each position that gets yes votes. They are part of that first wave that gets the combine invites. And that comes out, early December maybe?
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact timeline, but yeah, that's the first wave. Then there's a second... there's a second round of voting, which that's for most of the late underclassmen that, because obviously the deadline's until January 15th. So you need to make sure you have all the underclassmen in there. So there's a second wave of voting, the underclassmen, and then more of the fringe guys that didn't receive the first wave of yeses, but still have a chance. It used to be a lot more confined of a process. Only about like a handful, 5-7 guys, execs. And I know they used to do it in Mobile right after the Senior Bowl. Now, my understanding is it's back to the portal again, and it's a yes/no process. And this is where it gets really interesting because teams can be strategic with how they vote that second time. Some teams, it'll be congruent with their grades. If they have a draftable grade or a high PFA grade on a player, it's a yes. Other teams, a little more coy about it. There's definitely some gamemanship. If a team has a draftable or a healthy grade on a player, but they know other teams are lower on that player, they'll vote no on the player and try to keep them as a sleeper. And that's the second wave. And they usually... they end up with between 320, 330 total invites. But it's something to keep in mind because sometimes a player doesn't receive an invite, but it's 100% strategy by some of these voting teams to try and keep that player under the radar. And all the voting's anonymous. So, like I said, on average, there's about, low 30s, somewhere in there, non-combine guys that get drafted every year. But just something to keep in mind as we continue to go through the combine and then through the pro days, all the workouts.
Well, the Kobe Turner example is the best one, I feel like, because I know the Rams loved him. I think Jordan Roderick wrote an article about it. They used emojis with their grades now. They have like a fire emoji with it, and they drafted him.
That's so 2024. Jeez.
I know, isn't it? It's like I got it. Yeah, it's all just shorthand. It's even more shorthand now. But no, they obviously liked him. Took him in the third round and obviously had a good year. So that is a guy that I think is just one of those, like you said, gamesmanship. That's interesting. I knew some of the process, but actually I didn't know all of that. So that is fascinating, Dane. What I do know actually is you have a big board out.
I do.
100 players. The big XXL. We're getting there.
Honestly, I should have
XL at this point.
I should have done more because when I whittled it down, I had like 150 guys that graded. I feel really good about their grades, and I was like, all right, we'll have to chop 50 off of this. So I should have just did 150, but I chopped 50 off, and the final going from like 115 down to 100 was tough because there were like 15 guys that I hated leaving off this list, but you got to cut the number off somewhere. So just keep it at an even 100, and definitely, because All-Star, I haven't updated. My last top 50 was back in November, but I've had 2 mocks since then, and including this last one, which was a second round mock in mid-January. So I think by the way those mocks played out, you could tell kind of where my, like Terry and Arnold being my top corner back in, December, people I think can catch on. So not a huge surprise when Terry and Arnold's my top corner in this update, but yeah, definitely some based off the All-Star games, based off of catching up on late season tape, what I'm hearing from teams on players, medical wise, or just other things, and the way their teams talk about them. that type of thing. That plays into these grades as well. So where we are going into the combine, yeah, this is the 100 players I ended up with.
It's great. Well, let's start with number one. Actually, let's start with the position that grabs the headlines, the quarterbacks, the kickers. No, I'm kidding. The quarterbacks, which is you went back. You referred to your last big board, which was your top 50. I also had a big board recently, which was top 40 because I am not you and I'm at medium size right now. I cannot get to the XL size yet. I'm at medium, but we'll get past there. But like you, I was at like 68 graded guys, maybe 70 ish. And same thing. I was like, I really got down to about 48, 52. I was like, that was pretty tough to go to 40. But anyways, at number one, back to Caleb Williams, quarterback from USC. Is there anything that has put you over the top at this point or anything that changed? It has been 1A, 1B basically the whole season, but anything that kind of maybe gave him the tilt right here at this point in time?
Since we started doing the show in August, we have said that it is 1A, 1B. That's how both of us kind of felt. At the time, back in August, I was more Caleb's the A and Drake's the B, where you were the opposite. And to your credit, you haven't budged. That's May has been your quarterback one the whole way, and I give you credit for that. I went back and forth a little bit throughout the season, and that's kind of the flaw of doing this all year, and you're being transparent with how you feel about players. Is you will go back and forth on players sometimes, but now with the benefit of the full season. The way May played down the stretch a little bit, just my worries about him were amplified. You watch the Clemson tape, you watch the NC State tape. My concerns with him, just the way he would press, some of the reckless decisions, it bothers me. Not enough where I'm not going to draft him number 2 overall, but enough where Caleb is to me the guy. And I think it's interesting with him that he's going to get all these comps, whether it's Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Kyler Murray, whatever comp you end up using for Caleb, he's kind of his own guy. And the thing that really sets him apart is just that rare football awareness that he plays with. It makes him a playmaker. He can be a playmaker from the pocket. He can be a playmaker outside the pocket. He's not a perfect player by any means, but he has those playmaking instincts that I'm gonna trust as to be the guy that's gonna get me over the hump if I'm a team that needs a quarterback. And with May, so this is interesting with him, among the top 6 quarterbacks in this draft. So just going by Caleb, Drake, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. Out of those 6 guys, May had the fewest number of second half touchdowns this year and the most second half interceptions. And that's not, all on him. I mean, the supporting cast, his receivers in that NC State game, it was embarrassing. Right. They just were giving up on routes, drops everywhere. I mean, it was the offensive line wasn't doing him any favors. It was embarrassing. But I do think that it kind of speaks to some of the decision-making process and things that he has to work through. And but again, I mean, he is number 4 on this top 100, and I don't see him falling past that. I mean, but Caleb did go to number 1 for me, and I think that's going to be pretty cemented the rest of the process.
Yeah, I hadn't flopped. I had May 1 and Williams 4, but still 1, 2. And I watched the NC State game, Clemson games, and now I've gotten way too much tape on all these guys. I'm going to be watching it probably endlessly for the next 2 months. I did the same thing last year, but watching May and watching those games, there's kind of some subtle stuff that actually maybe like him a little bit more. There was the protection stuff that I didn't know that they gave him that license, and I thought that was really interesting. The Clemson game, he had a fantastic touchdown working backwards and away from
that
pressure.
First quarter touchdown.
Touchdown. Yeah. Yes. And like you said, he doesn't get a lot of help, and he does press. I think the NC State game, there's times where they're down 24-0 in the middle of the second quarter, and he's trying to get it all back at once. And that is a young guy, a young gunslinger guy that wants to try and make a play, sometimes to his detriment. I thought earlier in the year he had a moment like that. I wish I could recall the game. I want to say it was Virginia, but he had one earlier. Again, he was on a heat check. And he was like he had a huge drive where he hit like 5 throws in a row. So this next drive, he starts off and he was like, it was just one of those where it's like, why are you throwing that? Because he thought he can just make every throw. So I still love all that because of that. Like I'd rather rein that back in. And that's why I just kind of been solidified with that even in the bad games, there's a lot to like.
Yeah.
But I'm writing about Caleb next week, kind of a more deeper dive on him. And I think with Caleb is there's so much that you got to ask of what the hell was going on with that offense.
Yeah.
And I think so much the gifts that Caleb has, it's still 1A, 1B for me, but I'm like pretty solid that May is going to be one for me. I watched enough, and unless there's some terrible stuff that comes out about him, I think I'm pretty solid on it. But Caleb, I was getting down on a little bit, and I got to watch, again, take a deep breath, watch him all at whole last week, or all at once last week, and he has the special gifts that others just can't attain, even if he does have some blemishes. The quick throwing motion, the balance, you refer to it, the spatial awareness, his ability to find answers when he's on the move. Just get him with at least an above average OC, and he's going to be okay. I think he is also didn't like the offensive line was just bad last year for USC. It just like very much guys were losing blocks a lot in the interior. I do think he needs a good interior line to start out to help him out to kind of keep him from his worst tendencies. But the gifts that he has and the things that he can do and attain is like, yeah, that's why he won't drop. Like this is going to be it. Like this is going to be it. Basically, I think I'm pretty solid with this. And also I think he has good size, like as far as weight and sturdiness. And that's always a big thing I bring up. And I do think that it's not always available to him. There's times he will turn it down, but will throw it over the middle, which I'll bring up all the time because that sometimes can keep me from putting the guy over the top. But I'm with you. I think these guys are just easy top 5 grades. And I know it's going to be exhausting in the next couple of months. It's really just what flavor you prefer.
I'm surprised because I agree with you on all the May stuff. I'm surprised. It seems like there's a lot of people down on him.
Way down.
Yeah, I find it very surprising. I mean, he is the only quarterback over the last 2 years that has accounted for over 9,000 yards of total offense. He was the team. And it's not just with his arm. He accounted for 42 first downs with his legs on third or fourth down over the last 2 years. That's a crazy number. 42 on third or fourth down, just with his legs. So, what he can do as a scrambler, what he does from the pocket, what he can do as an athlete. I thought he did better with his eye manipulation. I think that there's just the way the ball comes off his hand. He's got a fluid, explosive release.
Great deep ball.
Yeah, and he can alter ball speeds. Yeah. So, when it needs a little bit of loft, he can do it. When he needs touch, he can do it. He knows he has a good feel for hot routes and checkdowns. Now, sometimes I feel like his arm gets juiced up, and we've talked about him before, but that's what leads to some of the ball placement issues. But he's not an inaccurate quarterback. So, yeah, surprised that there's been more discourse than expected, I guess, on May. But we're both on the same page with these quarterbacks. They're NFL starters and guys that if you're going to take a swing on a quarterback in this draft, you can feel good that you're going to take a swing on one of these two guys.
Watching the Super Bowl just now, and I'm not compared to the guy Mahomes, but or watching Herbert and watching other quarterbacks, Lamar's and Josh Allen's. Like even at the end, the Bills missed the kick. Allen was hitting throws to bring him back in the game. These two quarterbacks are doing that type of stuff that you want out of your top 5, top 6 quarterbacks that in the league, is that they are truly willing their team to a score with playmaking, with precise throws, working from the pocket and outside the pocket, and then just running when they need to. And it's like, okay, these two got it done. We're good. We'll just move on from that. Speaking of moving on, next one is kind of consensus QB3 right now. Some guys seem to get going pretty wild about him. Jane Daniels, quarterback from LSU. You have him at 8 overall. I had him at 13 overall. Yes, I had him at 13 overall, but kind of similar-ish, I guess, I suppose, area. Any comments on Daniels, or want to just move to your QB4? Because I think we have the same there.
I mean, it's tough when how do you compare a quarterback with an offensive tackle, and like doing these rankings? Like really quarterbacks they should be at their separate rankings, and then the non-quarterbacks,
that's it.
So it's always tough where to put these quarterbacks. But with Jaden Daniels, I still have some questions about some of the processing stuff. And this is a conversation, similar conversation we had with Tua and Mac Jones and some of the Ohio State guys, where the situation around him was so good. The offensive line giving him all the time in the world. 2 first-round wide receivers throwing to, and another 2 receivers that'll be drafted next year. Like it's a perfect situation. And so how do you have to scout him independent of that, and that's not an easy thing to do. You don't ding him for it's not his fault that he had all that talent around him, but at the same time, you have to try to divorce him from that situation, and that's not an easy thing to do. So, I like Jane Daniels quite a bit. I think that there's a good chance he is the third pick overall. There's a good chance we see quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. And if the Patriots don't make that pick, they could trade out of that pick, and they get plenty of offers, I think, for a team to go up to number 3 and make the selection for a quarterback. So there is a good chance we see quarterbacks off the board 1, 2, 3, similar to was that the 2021 draft when it was the Lawrence, Wilson, Trey Lance 1, 2, 3. So this will be interesting to see how it plays out. And then
99 was that 1, 2, 3? No, it was
with Tim Couch, Akili Smith, or Donovan McNabb, Akili Smith. Yeah. This will, and then it'll be interesting after that. When's that fourth quarterback come off the board, and who is it? I think J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. He was your fourth quarterback as well, right?
Yes, he was. I had him in the 30s somewhere, 35.
Okay, and he was, I think, 24, 25 for me.
24, yep.
Yep.
But in that 20 to 40 range, I mean, that's the same kind of tier.
Yeah. I think he is my earliest second round grade, basically.
That's
and
good.
So, but I think, usually second round quarterbacks go in the first round. And where is going to be the big question with JJ McCarthy? I think he's going to win over coaches during the process. That's certainly going to help him. And it's interesting with those picks 11, 12, 13 with what's the Vikings, Broncos, Raiders, Saints, right, I believe. It's hard to see him getting past all 4 of those teams. It really is, because of just if you're the Vikings, you re-sign Kirk for a year or 2, you draft JJ McCarthy, you've got your succession plan in place. If you're the Raiders, you'd love a quarterback right now, but if you can't, then you draft JJ. You've got Aiden O'Connell for a year, however you end up doing it. I mean, there's different ways for them to attack this quarterback position, but McCarthy's going to be such a wild card through this process. And then, same thing with Bo Nix and Michael Penix. Did either one of those make your top 40?
They did not. I believe I just made it a four horse. I'm really coming around on Rattler, and I just he'll end up probably in my top 50-ish, I think. But yeah, he's closer to Nix and Penix to me than I think those 3 are more in the same tier than maybe I even thought originally. But I like what you're bringing up though with McCarthy. He does grow on you the more you watch him, because you have to watch the whole season to get a good amount of reps of pass attempts. But he does grow on you, and I'll just I think a few people have said it, but there's going to be certain guys, certain coaches that love his skill set because of his ability to throw on the move. He's smart. He throws over the middle, and he's got enough arm juice to attack certain areas. So, like you said, you brought up the Vikings, like Kevin O'Connell. This is ideal and what he wants to do. And he throws a nice deep ball. But then you get other guys in that offense. Okay, Sean McVay for post-career Stafford at 19. Then you got Dolphins, who know what they're doing with Tua, which is also an interesting thing. I know. So it's just going to be spicy. There's so many teams that I think are going to end up liking him. But but the other 3 guys there, or I should say 2 for you. Well, really 1, actually. You have these guys different tiers. You have Nix next at QB5, and you have him at 37 overall. And then Penix at 57 overall. These 2 were both at the Senior Bowl. Did they kind of help themselves, hurt themselves? I know we talked about it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but also it seems to be a little bit more separation than maybe they had going in, at least just by your rankings.
Well, and I mean, I don't know. You and I have been very outspoken, or forthright with our opinion on Michael Penix.
As outspoken as me and you can be. Yes.
right. Yeah. He's been always more of not a top 50 guy for us, and how he played against Texas was an eye opener. It's like, okay, well, but then it was what he did against Michigan was. Yeah. What's that?
It's a Principal Skinner meme. It's the am I out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong. That's
right.
That was the Texas game for me.
Yeah. So Michael Penix, is a fine quarterback. I don't think he's in that top 50 conversation. Now maybe he ends up getting drafted there, but he's not a top 50 guy for me. And then Spencer Rattler, he definitely moved up. He was probably the best quarterback during the week of Senior Bowl that I saw up close. Very repeatable with his mechanics. He's very consistent with his touch. I think one of my favorite stats from this entire quarterback class is the South Carolina offensive line this year. They had a different front five combination on the offensive line in 10 of the 12 games in 2023. That's crazy. Like he was running for his life that entire season, and when you look at that offensive line and the struggles they had, it's the context is important here. With Spencer Rattler. So, and then Michael Pratt, he snuck in there at 100. So wanted to get his name in there as well.
Yeah, I see that. I always love your 100th guy because I know that's a special meaning to you. Yeah, squeeze him right in there. But Rattler,
you know me.
But Rattler, yes, the offensive line, he's gonna get used to. He got used to some NFL pockets there. Some revolving doors at the guard positions. Those guys are a lot of lookout blocks. But you talked about his mechanics. He's clean. He's such a clean thrower. It's exactly why he was such a high recruit and what he showed at Oklahoma. He's just such a clean thrower. That ball pops out of his hand. He's the guy I really wish I got to see live. Missing the Senior Bowl, so excited to maybe hopefully see him at the combine throw a little bit.
I think the biggest thing for him is just, can he be a little more urgent with his process, with his reads, and and that's not necessarily something you get from the Senior Bowl practices because, but he was the MVP of the game, so not that counts for a whole lot, but I think
Jake Moody. Shrine Bowl MVP last year.
There you go. But once the bullets start flying, that's when he has to just speed everything up a little bit more. And time will tell if he's able to do it. But a good chance he's drafted somewhere on day 2.
Let's get to the pass catchers. How about that? Let's go there, and then we'll get to the big boys on the offense.
So many of them.
How many did you have? I had it written down. Was it 17?
Yeah.
17 in your top 100. But I get it. There's plenty of guys at the top. We'll start right there. Obviously, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. I shouldn't say obviously. I hate when people do that, but I'm going to say obviously here. Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 2 overall. But I thought this was and you hinted at this, I would say, the last couple of months on this show. But you have Malik Neighbors at number 3 overall. Very close, even ahead of Drake May. And then you have Roman Dunze at number 7 overall. I had him Dunze at 7 overall as well, but I had him kind of a 7A, 7B with Neighbors. You ask me every day, I would go back and forth. I think they're both exceptional top 10 guys. Then you had Thomas as your receiver 4, Brian Thomas, I should say, from LSU.
Yep.
Neighbors teammate at 14 overall. And that's kind of your top 20-ish guys, that kind of true first. I don't want to speak for you, but 2 true first round graded guys.
True first round grades. Yeah.
Yep.
100%.
And that is literally what I have, the same. I have those 4 as my true. Yep. Those are blues, and Harrison's a purple for me, which is the rare grade. But that's how
I do have Neighbors close to Harrison. I mean, Harrison, no one's going to knock him off that top spot, but
dark blue for you.
Tell me the limitations that Malik Neighbors has. It's like he doesn't have any. You can nitpick him for sure. I mean, he's a little
nitpicking.
Yeah, he's a little lean. He's probably going to be right around 205 pounds. So the play strength is adequate. It's not a bad thing. It's not a strength of his. I think that he doesn't have a ton of special teams experience. I mean, but see, like I have to reach to find out like what exactly is holding him back. So when you talk about how explosive he is, his ability to accelerate, decelerate on command, he's always available as a receiver, and that's such a key thing for receivers translating, especially early in their career in the NFL. And he's still so young. He doesn't turn 21 years old until he reports for his first training camp in the NFL. So this is a guy that is at such a young age, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, led the SEC in receiving back-to-back years. There's so much to like about him. So I do think it's 1A, 1B with Harrison and Neighbors. And then Adunze, again, in most years, he's the top receiver. And in this year, he just happens to be the third receiver. But the way he plays through contact and just how savvy he is, but also a good height, weight, speed athlete. So, yeah, these 3 receivers, Brian Thomas right behind them, but those top 3 especially, if you're the Bears at 9, you examine the possibility of trading up 3 spots. I know they don't have maybe a ton of draft capital to do it, but you examine the options, because that really changes things. If you are able to have Caleb Williams and then pair him with, not only do you have DJ Moore, but add in a Malik Neighbors or an Adunze, man, that's a game changer.
It would be. Absolutely would be, especially because I'm comfortable with their tackle situation too, so that's why I'm
100%.
Crank up the weapons. Let's go. And they can
if they don't take if their top 3 receivers are off the board at 9, It's I don't know which direction they would go because I don't offensive tackle is not an immediate need with the way Braxton Jones played at left tackle. Obviously,
Bowers.
Darnell Wright at right tackle. Yeah, I mean, Komet is obviously your tight end one, and then Bowers is going to be more of the hybrid. And
Yeah.
do you have the offensive coordinator, the plan in place to have Bowers be part of that? I don't know, and so I really think that things are wide open if those top three receivers are off the board starting at number 9, which I expect that they would be. It's if you're the Bears, you're hoping three quarterbacks go in the top 8.
Yeah.
But it's a hard time seeing one of those three receivers fall all the way to number 9.
Or someone really wants defensive help. And they're just like they take a defensive guy and you can just get
Yeah.
one of these guys to drop. But yeah, it's hard for me to give a true first round grade on receiver. And like we said, all 4 of these guys easily deserve it. Like neighbors to me is that it's the classic. Okay, his route running isn't the pristine yet, but his body control and quickness and explosiveness, he's going to be able to learn it. You know what I mean? It's not like he has a athletic deficiency where you're like, yeah, he can't bend, he can't, he can't come down his route and sink into his route breaks or anything like that. It's like, no, he's an exceptional athlete. And Duzier, I go back and forth on his name. I'm gonna get a nail it. But the thing with him is just, I just like everything he does. How
Yes.
he's not only just good, he's good to very good at everything, and that's what it's like. Yeah, I could just see he's very scheme proof to me where it's like I can see him in any type of offense in any type of role, and I think he's going to be able to hit the ground running in that. So, and then Thomas, we've talked about Thomas a decent amount. It's just that he's still working there, has the size of a true X, but doesn't play like that. And I don't mean that in a bad way because he kind of has a developing underneath stuff, and yet his route running is improving. But after that, yeah, it's funny actually. We both had Tuesday at 7. I had Thomas at 14 as well, so we matched on those. And then you have Keon Coleman from Florida State at 28. I had him at 27. So we were right in lockstep here right now until we get to the next guy. We can't wait for this discussion. The next guy, because you have Keon Coleman at 28, and then you have Ladd McConkey from Georgia all the way up there at 34, which I love. I snuck him into my top 40 as well. And then you have Donnie Mitchell from Texas at 35, Troy Franklin from Oregon at 40. Oh my God, there's so many of these guys. I didn't know where to cough. Let's stop right there at 40 right there to get through this group right now. But Ladd McConkey, I think, is a big mover. I know you stuck me at 50, I believe, in your top 50 a couple months ago. Or was that? Right. No, that was, yeah. So now he's up to 34, and I think there's a growing consensus with him that he is just a baller. So a Senior Bowl standout was McConkey. But any of these guys that you want to talk about more, Dane?
Yeah, no, my top 50 update I did it right around Halloween, and McConkey made it in there, and he's only helped himself since then, especially at the Senior Bowl. He is undersized. He's had injuries the last 2 years. That does make it tough because he's not a big guy, and so it worries you moving forward. But good luck covering this guy in the slot. I mean, the way he can create his own space, not just with the speed and the quickness, but with the way that he uses his body in his routes, his footwork. He's just a very crafty player. And to add that to an offense, I think he's going to pay immediate dividends. So if you're a team that needs that slot player in the early second round, I don't think you wouldn't hesitate to add a player like this. But if you're looking for more of an outside receiver who can be a true starter for you, then add a Nate Mitchell. I mean, I think he makes sense for a lot of teams. Once you get past that those first round wide receivers, Mitchell is really interesting because he has that upside. He has that ability to be that playmaker on the outside. But then you've got Troy Franklin, who's a different type of receiver. And then you've got a different group of receivers with Xavier Worthy from Texas, who came in, what was he? He was 46 overall. Roman Wilson was in there, 45. Malachi Corley at 49 is a different type of receiver. And then once you get out of the top 50, that's where I had the other two Washington guys with Jalen Polk at 54. And then I think people are sleeping on Jalen McMillan, the other Washington receiver, because he missed most of the year with that injury. But man, he is a good player, and he reminds me of a juiced up Jacoby Myers, where he's you put him in the slot, he's a long player, former baseball center fielder. You can see that range when he goes and makes plays on the ball. McMillan's a good player, but yeah, there were 17 receivers in here for me. I think maybe the one that's the toughest to peg is Devontae Walker, North Carolina.
I was going to ask you about him. Yeah.
I have a third round grade on him. But he is a guy, you see the speed. He was one of the fastest players I saw in Mobile, but also one of the most inconsistent. So many drops. I mean, he fights the ball. And that just bugs the heck out of me. And it's tough to get past that. But if you can work past that, he has the athleticism, he has the length, but the consistency just isn't there. And so, how long before he learns to be a better route runner, he learns to be more focused at the catch point, and where do you draft a guy like that? Mm-hmm. So I think grades are going to be all over the place on Walker.
Yeah, it seemed like he had a kind of a sluggish Senior Bowl week a little bit. Yeah, he throws the hand up a lot when he's a receiver, because I watched a lot of Drake May. I saw a lot of Walker hand up, even though he was covered and not.
I'm open.
Yeah, he loved doing that.
But then he drops it. Right.
And then he drops it. Yes, and the can't run. His route tree is a little barren at this point in time. I had Troy Franklin as my receiver 6 when I did my big board. So right after Keon Coleman, I was like, I think about 32 with him. But McConkey, I think his archetype as far as that kind of true old school slot receiver, as far as the more quicker than the long speed, bigger guys that are there these days, is I actually think it's going to help out, because now there's bigger slot players. So now we're kind of going all the way back to now getting him an advantage working over the middle. But yeah, it was cool watching him have a great Senior Bowl, because I know we both were pretty high on him originally. Roman Wilson, another great Senior Bowl guy, but also had a great college football playoff. The double jump catch he had against Alabama was super impressive. Shows off. He's just a good player. Like, he's kind of, his size isn't overwhelming, just good hands, good route runner. I really like his game.
A lot of the things you say about McConkey, you could also say for Roman Wilson. He's a hard guy to cover.
He is. And he just moves the chains. And it's one of those guys are going to have a role in offense. Like, it might not be a superstar, but a very productive role. So I like those. I'm glad he brought up McMillan. I've been, had that Christian Kirk comp early in the season, because he has that smooth kind of slot work from there. So that was one. Is it Pearsall? Ricky Pearsall?
Yeah.
Okay,
Slick
you
Rick.
had it from Florida. Had him from receiver from Florida, also another Senior Bowl guy, I believe. You have him at 78 overall. I remember him from his Anthony Richardson catching the ball days, but this is Pearsall. How did he do down there in Mobile? Because I have yet to study him this season. I'm not going to lie, I have not watched a ton of Florida offense on film this year.
Yeah, I mean, like the first 2 reps were rough for Pearsall, and then I don't think he dropped the ball the rest of the week. I mean, he was outstanding. I mean, his focus is exceptional. His hands are very good. He contorts his body really well to go make plays on the ball. Obviously, he had that one-handed catch against Charlotte. That was the catch of the year. But even like the basic catches, the way he could frame things, he's just a very natural at that. He's very good at creating space, because he understands coverages, and then he can open the door. He's got a little bit of catch and go to him as well. So there's a lot to like about his rhythmic movements, the way he could shake free, his toughness over the middle. I think he could be that dirty slot player where he's going to take a hit, he's going to get right back up. He's reliable, dependable, the type of guy that quarterbacks are going to really find some immediate chemistry with.
I like that a lot. It's that's funny. Yeah, the dirty slot. I like that. Scrapping it up in there. Going on other pass catchers, tight ends. Brock Bowers, number 5 overall. Not a shock, I don't think, to anyone. But then we have to go all the way down to 50 to see tight end 2, which is Jatavian Sanders from Texas, and then Theo Johnson. That's another Senior Bowl guy, someone that we have talked about a little bit over the last couple of months. But can you talk about a little bit Johnson, how he did it down in Mobile? Because I think in this type of tight end class, he's an interesting flavor that maybe some of these other guys aren't.
Yeah, he helped himself. I think at Penn State you saw the flashes, but he was never a big production guy in that offense. He never had more than 350 yards receiving in a season at Penn State. And this is a guy that has a lot of tools, just was never a big part of the offense. But then he goes to the Senior Bowl and looks really natural running his routes, catches the ball well. When you look at the traits, he has a lot that will translate well to the next level. And so I think you've got a guy here who A+ measurements, smooth athletic tools. Yeah, the tape's a little inconsistent. The production's not what you want, but as a guy that's going to continue developing and getting better, this is the type of investment you want to make on day 2 in a tight end. His former teammate Brenton Strange went late second round last year. So Theo Johnson, especially in this draft class, that's another part of this is the tight ends. After Brock Bowers, there's a big drop off, and then somewhere Jatavion Sanders is going to go, probably in that 40 to 60 range. And then after that is another drop off, and a team that really needs a tight end. You're looking at Theo Johnson and saying, okay, if we don't get our guy now, we're not going to get a tight end in this class that we think can maybe eventually be a starter for us. So Theo Johnson, I think, is a guy that helped himself in Mobile, and a guy that will end up going somewhere on day 2, just a matter of where.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. It's he's tight end. It's just so hard. So again, it's the biggest, fastest athlete theory, and just hope they figure it out. Right. And he's the perfect type because there's flashes of actual good play, and that's like this is exact. You have him at 76. I think that's a perfect type of range for him. Yes, I'm very interested in Johnson. Cade Stover from Ohio State, another kind of wild horse type of player, converted from linebacker. You snuck him in at 94, but he's going to be kind of a eye the beholder of how you want to use him and what his best role, because I think he's still a developing player. I was curious.
He's just not he's a good athlete, but just not a Theo Johnson type of athlete.
Right.
And that obviously is kind of changes things. But yeah, like you said, it depends on what you're looking for. And he would have played in the Senior Bowl, but he played through an injury all year for Ohio State, which I think speaks to his toughness and just what you're getting with him. I think Cade Stover, if he's available at the end of the 3rd round, he could end up being really good value there.
Special team coaches are going to love him. And then I was hoping you'd sneak in AJ Barner from Michigan. I was hoping you maybe sneak him in there.
You like him that high, huh?
Close. He would, if I did 100, he'd be 100. Like he was
okay.
He'd be my 100 guy just to sneak in there. I have him like maybe a little lower graded. I kind of have a 4th-ish on him right now, but I like him. He does a lot. All right, so let's get to the big boys, because honestly, this might be the headline position for this draft, because I believe 6 of your top 18 are offensive tackles, and was it 7 of your top 20?
8 in the top 20.
8 of your top 20. So oh my God, so over a third. So let's start with the tackles. You have Joe Alt from Penn State as your number 1 tackle at the 6th spot, and then Olu Fashanu from Penn State at number 9 overall. Are these two kind of the same tier, or do you think Alt is kind of a clear tier above at this point in time?
I don't know about tier, but I do think Joe Alt's clearly the better. I think Joe Alt is clearly the best offensive lineman in this draft. I think the improvements he has shown in such a short period of time is so impressive. Considering he wasn't a full-time offensive lineman in high school, to what he did as a freshman at Notre Dame, what he did as a sophomore, and then the improvements he made here as a junior. You have Jake Matthews in who's the former tackle for the Patriots and Giants?
Solder.
Yeah, Nate Solder. He's Jake Matthews in Nate Solder's body. He has that size, a little narrow.
Yeah.
But the way he plays, the way he can sit down, the way that he's as a run blocker, his recovery skills. Joe Alt to me is the top offensive. He separated himself as the top offensive lineman this year. Olu to me is the second guy. And then that's where it gets interesting, because I think you've got these next 4 tackles, and depending on what you're looking for specifically, you're going to have these next 4 guys in a different order. Talking about J.C. Latham from Alabama, Fuaga, Oregon State, Tyler Guyton, Oklahoma, and then Marius Mims, Georgia. The order on these guys is going to be different from team to team, evaluator to evaluator, based off of what you're looking for. And for me, I went, Latham, to me, I really feel like he might be the strongest player in the draft.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of differentiating trait, that gives you a little bit of an edge. And so he's at the top of that stack for me. Fuaga, because he is so NFL ready. He's next. And then what? Marius Mims, how freaky
Georgia.
Seeing him up close, because when I went to offensive line masterminds, I was talking to Duke Manyweather. Mims is right next to us, and just unbelievable how he's built, his size, his length, and then to see him move on tape the way he does. People will be talking about that Ohio State game from last year as, look, see what this guy can do. This is with no experience, and just wait till we get our hands on him, and it will not be hard to talk yourself into Amarius Mims. So, I mean, if Mims ends up at the top 10 pick, that wouldn't be a surprise at all. And then Tyler Guyton, who, seeing him up close at the Senior Bowl, you see the movement skills. He was a lot better, I thought, with his anchor, his ability to really sit down versus power, use different. I mean, Darius Robinson did get him with some moves, but I really thought Guyton was more polished than I was expecting. So and stronger at the point of attack. So
Yeah.
These 4 tackles are just a really interesting group that I can understand why you would have maybe a different order depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, I've Latham still as tackle 3, and I'm with you. So strong, and I actually think he's better in pass sets than maybe he's been getting credit for. Like, he's a more fluid athlete, considering he's 350, 360 pounds.
Inside moves give him tough time, But yeah,
I'm curious what his length is. That is kind of what I've been wondering too. Because he's just built uniquely for an offensive tackle. He's built like a gigantic globe with arms and legs coming out of it. He really is. But I like wrong, yeah. I like it. There's gonna be like Bill Callahan would love him. I know he's Tennessee. Joe Alt, by the way, probably everyone's favorite matching in mock drafts. But Fuaga has been again another Senior Bowl guy. I thought it was great watching him in the pass set, stuff like that too, and get to see him go at it, and then kind of he's interestingly built. But I like what your comment about the polish. I still have Mims above him because I just can't, like you said, I can't quit it. It's rare stuff. And as far as just body traits and everything, and he's a good enough player already. That's not just a total project. Guyton too, a great movement ability too. I really am excited to watch his Senior Bowl stuff, but then getting to the next crop, kind of have a guy by himself here at the tackle position. That's here we go. Kingsley Suamatia.
Yeah.
Suamatia. Okay. Kingsley Suamatia from BYU. I have him actually a little higher than you. I have him more in the 20s. I'm a fan. I kind of like his, again, another size guy with athleticism and length appears and looks like he has gigantic hands. He was a former big recruit too, but the guy that's going to need some work. But I do think that he has the tools there. You have him at 38 before dropping to Patrick Paul at 55. And then your guy from Yale, I'll wait on the name yet. And then Blake Fisher at 63. But your guy from Yale is at 58. Very interesting prospect. I got some of my Yale film, so I got to watch them. So I was pretty excited to watch them. I want to talk to you about them maybe after the show. But no, but these next
Amagaji. Yes.
Okay.
Karan Amagaji.
Karan. Okay.
Yeah, and I've got a story about him coming out next week. Just kind of a feature on him, how he's doing with his injury, all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
that's awesome. I would say actually the most notable thing to me is maybe Patrick Paul at 55. I think I had him about 38 on mine. And was anything recently that's happened with Paul? Is it more just as you see more tape, maybe lack of development? I'm not trying to lead the witness, but more just maybe just see traits as far as an unfinished box of tools, I should say, or anything else with Paul that you see that makes him at 55 as opposed to 30 or something like that.
I mean, he's so big and long, and you love that about him. But at the same time, and I was, Brandon Thornton and I were standing next to each other watching him during one-on-ones at Senior Bowl practice, and we were talking to each other about this, how his length works against him. It's a detriment at times, because when he doesn't connect, which happens more times than when you'd like to see, his recoil and his ability to reset, it just takes too long, because he's got further to go and bring him back, that it actually works against him. And he is very raw. He plays high. Leverage is just it's a big struggle for him. And so, I worry about how early he's going to be able to contribute. Is he going to be able to work through all the mistakes? I did think he showed improvements from his junior year to his senior year that I think were encouraging. But at the same time, the more I really dug in on him, it does worry me because I think his rhythm breaks down too easily. Opponents are going to be able to find success in different ways because his recovery technique is just not there.
Yeah.
His hand usage is raw. You remind me a lot of Okafor for the Steelers, as just a guy that you can put out there and, he can be okay for stretches, but I don't know that you're fully going to trust him, but he has the tools, and those guys don't last too long. When we talk, because there's only so many of these guys that have those tools, and so he's going to go. It's just a matter of when does a team feel comfortable taking him.
That's the difference between him and a guy like Mims. Mims's play is way more polished. His hand usage is way better, even with the lack of time and starts and everything already. And Paul, to me, he's just. It's just he misses, and like you said, it's the lack of recovery. That's a good way to put it. Like his kind of reset takes too long. Maybe he should only go out 8/10 of the way because he's got such long arms. But and then the last guy, of course, was Blake Fisher. I said that's number 63. But getting to the interior line, I don't even know if I'm going to go with what I think is maybe the star-powered position of the offensive line. Is that the center? Is that we got 3 guys in your top 36? One at number 20. Jackson Powers Johnson, who we gushed about, and I think enough people were like, all right, we get it. He's a good center. I think after we gushed about him a lot after the Senior Bowl, but you have Graham Barton from Duke at 27 and Zach Frazier from West Virginia at 36, but that's 3 pretty highly graded centers. Kind of why? Why, Dane? Why do we have 3 highly graded centers that are in their top 40 at this point in time?
Well, I mean, 2 of them were in my first round mock from mid-January. So, even before the Senior Bowl, it was like, okay, these guys are legit players. And Jackson, he was as advertised plus more. I mean, he is
even better.
He looks kind of like Creed Humphrey because he's so wide. He's got that barrel chest to him. But the power that he plays with, his ability to find his balance consistently, even when because the technique's not perfect with him. He's not, quote unquote, a technician. And he's young. He just turned 21 years old. But so he's not quite there yet with just some of the fundamental stuff. But man, his ability to recover, anchor, and do this all with balance and contact balance, it is so rare and so impressive to watch. So, and he's powerful. He'll create torque. He'll fend off defenders. He is a guy that even without the technique will come over time. Give me the guy with the combination of the athleticism, the size, the toughness. He can play guard or center. He played both at the Senior Bowl, looked great doing it. He had to leave midweek with a hamstring injury, and it was kind of like, all right, I mean, he's shown all he can show. I mean, I don't have any questions about him. No notes. So Jackson Powers Johnson, coming into Senior Bowl, he was my top center, and he's leaving the same way. It's almost like, okay, it's 20 too low for him. So he's a good player.
He can be a weapon at center, like as a puller on screens and everything. Like we think of Jason Kelsey, but he's big. This guy's gigantic.
He's fun too. There was during, I think I mentioned this on the last pod, but there was a play down the field, I think to Theo Johnson, where it's just 7-on-7, and he's running 30 yards down the field to go give him a chest bump. He is a guy that loves to play, and it comes out very earnestly on his tape.
Yeah, he plenty of film where. Running back on a screen, like cut back, and he's like guiding him. He's like, no, go in, follow me. It's so
you can tell those are his favorite. Yeah.
Yes. Screens are hilarious with him. But then, Barton from Duke, who has some positional versatility. He's played a lot of tackle, but yes, I think the interior is the best spot. But again, both of these guys have interior versatility. I think legit interior versatility, but I think center is their best position. But then Zach Frazier, who is you've talked about his toughness before. You've talked about he's a gamer. All through and through, might be a center only guy, and I think that is why maybe to me that he's maybe a graded back, and maybe he has some limitations size wise compared to these other guys. That's to me. And then your last guy is Cedric Van Pran at 93. Your center at 4, who is kind of a long starter in the SEC, smart, has some limitations, but you kind of know what you're getting with Van Pran. But that is the
NFL play strength. Like him in the run game. He's got leadership. He's got smarts. I think he'll struggle a little bit when he's in space versus NFL athletes. Yeah. But I think he's a guy that is not a guaranteed 10-year starter in the NFL, but he's going to come in and compete. And he's a guy that's going to at least help your center spot on your depth chart, no doubt. With Frazier, he's again, just seeing him run at OL Masterminds was crazy. Just 2 months removed from that broken leg, but yeah, talking to his teammates about him, they love him. He does have that, the character you want for a center. He's smart. He got married in the off season. 5 of his teammates were groomsmen, so no questions about birthday party, that kind of thing with him.
It's the quarterback and the other 4 offensive linemen. That's that.
And I mentioned it before, but he hit the DNA lottery because his dad's side were football players, his mom's side were wrestlers, and it fit perfectly for him. So, but I wanted to make sure we hit the running backs too. No running backs in the top 65 of the top 100,
top 69, top 70. You got your first running back is at 70.
Yeah, between 70 and 92, there are 7 running backs. So there's a run on these guys, and it's almost like last year's class where the value of the position was the mid to late 3rd round, except we didn't have a Bijan or a Gibbs in the 1st round to go early. It's just where these guys come off the board will be interesting on day 2. There's a good chance someone gets taken before 70, just a team that really wants running back help and they've fallen in love with a guy. I mean, it could take them mid-2nd round. That's definitely possible. But this is a interesting running back class. Just depends on kind of what you want, what you're looking for.
Yeah, big time eye of the beholder. Well, we do have the guards too, because that has loaded. I just got excited about the centers, and they came first alphabetically, and that's just my own. You can see my ADD in action right there. But you have Troy Fontenot for Washington, guard, great player. I got to watch some college football playoff tape, and I thought he did really well, even if other guys were kind of falling apart. The right tackle, the rough one in the final. But no, Fontenot. Man, he's good. I would give him a shot at right tackle just to see.
Sure.
He
has the length to do it. I think aesthetically, he kind of just looks like a guard. Like I think he'll be maximized as a guard.
SpongeBob SquarePants. Yeah.
There you go. But like putting him at guard is not saying that he can't play tackle. It's saying I think he'll be a really good tackle or a great guard. And so. Yeah, and same thing with Jordan Morgan from Arizona. I have him as a guard. I know several teams that have him as a guard. Doesn't mean he can't play tackle. It's just
I think tackle right now still. I have not bumped him to guard yet.
Totally understand why. I think he can be a really good tackle. I think he could be a better guard. But when you're trying to get the best 5 out there, having some of that position flexibility certainly helps your favor. Why both those guys could end up being as 1st-round picks.
Oh, man, like Jordan Morgan with a Shanahan offense would be phenomenal. Like 49ers would love him because, again, we've joked about this. It's like, oh, who needs help throughout the offensive line? Give him the guy that we don't know if he's a guard or a tackle yet. Okay, cool. I'll get him right there. But seriously, I love Morgan because of how he plays, because he's his movement ability, his ability to get cutoffs and space. Like, actually, like Miami or San Fran would love to have a Jordan Morgan, I think.
Oh, yeah, no question. And one thing I really like with the Pac-12 is they have the Morris Trophy, which is voted on. It goes to the best offensive lineman and defensive lineman in the conference, but who votes on it is the coaches, and so the defensive line, the best defensive lineman, the opposing offensive lineman, and the coaches vote on that. So it's not the writers, it's not the SIDs, it's who's voting on it. And you think about some of we just talked about Jordan Morgan. We talked about Fuaga. I mean, there's some pretty good offensive line players. Jackson Powers Johnson, pretty good offensive lineman in the Pac-12.
Pac-12 guys, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Fontenot's the one that won the Morris Trophy. So obviously had that respect from his peers and a guy that has a lot going for him. I knew he was gonna be in my top 20. It's just a matter of how high do I put this guy, because he's awesome.
Yeah, you have him 19 overall. That's a very healthy grade. I have a blue color on him, which is equivalent to this, a top 20 grade, essentially. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Dropping down, we get to Cooper Beebe at 47 from Kansas State, another SpongeBob SquarePants build guy. But then we got Dominic Pooney from Kansas. I like Pooney. I'm a fan, but I actually really wanted to ask you about the next couple guys. Pooney would actually be one of them. Actually, really all of these guys, so I spoiled it. But yeah, Pooney, Christian Haynes from UConn, Christian Mahogany from Boston College. I thought those guys were interesting. I was curious what your thoughts on them, because I believe they were all-star game standouts. And these type of guys seem to rise in this process as more teams get eyes on them.
Mahogany is just a power guy. I mean, he is a bouncer outside of the club, looking to bash heads with power, forceful hands, and he's not a bad athlete by any means. Just needs to play with a little more control when you ask him to play in space. But yeah, he is a guy that is built on power. I thought he had a good week. Seeing him up close at the Shrine Game during practices, that was fun. Pooney is. He has tackle experience. He played left tackle this past year. Like him best inside a guard.
I do
Bet
too.
on himself. Going to Division II to Kansas, and he played well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do too, because I don't think he's the guy that I'm like, no, I'm not going to try my tackle for too long. That would be let's try right away. Sorry.
No. And along those lines of guys that help themselves, Pooney playing center during Senior Bowl week certainly helps. And then with Christian Haynes at UConn, I thought he had a really good week, Senior Bowl week, put himself into the top 100. UConn. Haven't been a ton of reasons to watch UConn over the last few years, but Christian Haynes definitely one of them. He's maybe not a big time athlete, but he's a good enough athlete. But he also has the play strength. He has the smarts. He's a finisher. So that helps. You don't have to be a top tier athlete as long as you have those other things, and I think he certainly does.
Right. Okay. I spent too long on offense, like I always do. So it splits right. We'll get to the defense. So your top graded guy, because this is actually the position that probably has the most first round kind of graded guys, is the corner position. You have Terrion Arnold, like you said, that you have hinted that he's your corner one for a while now. Full agreement from over here. But you have him at 10 overall, which is your first defensive player on your big board. So the first 9 is offense, if anyone doing math at home. But number 11, your cornerback 2 is who, Dane? Super interesting name here.
Quinyon Mitchell from the MAC in Toledo. I think in my mid-January mock, he was like 22 or something like that. So I mean, he was squarely in the first round at that point. Seeing him up close at the Senior Bowl from start to finish, he clamped down on coverage or on the receivers and showed you the coverage you wanted to see from a player that was big time in the MAC. But okay, how would he do against Roman Wilson and Ricky Pearsall and the best receivers that the Senior Bowl had? He played outstanding. I mean, he is. And then it's like, okay, you want a guy with size. All right, he's 6 foot, 200 pounds. You want a guy with speed. All right, he's going to run the 4.3s at the combine. My favorite thing about him is how composed he plays. Like, he is always under control with his transitions, with his movements. Doesn't matter if he's playing press, he's playing off. They were very zone heavy at Toledo, so seeing him press and do that at the Senior Bowl practices was really important. So just a balanced size speed athlete, stays in phase up and down the field. And then if you want to go with production, that passes defended, interceptions, that translates. All right, over the last 2 years, he accounted for I think it was 46 passes defended over the last 2 years. And I don't care what division you're playing at. That's just remarkable production. It's crazy. And he got his hands on plenty of balls during Senior Bowl practices. You could just tell his awareness, his feel, it's just different. The ball skills. I do not use the word elite very often in my reports. I use them for his ball skills. He just has a knack for it. And this is a guy that is NFL ready. He's a starter. He's got a very bright future in the league.
Yeah. What did his? I agree. I thought I was getting spicy and having him in my top 20. I was yeah. All right, here we go here. But because he measured in just great. Of course, he had the impressive Senior Bowl. So I'm full steam ahead. I love that you had him this high because I think he's so deserving of it. Next, you had Cooper DeJean at 23 overall, which I think is about right. DeJean, of course, is getting healthy right now. Is he doing anything at the combine? Do you know? As far as drills or anything? I know that's an unfair question to ask you, but
I don't know, but I mean, I know he was just cleared, so it's just a matter of has he had enough time to train,
that stuff.
I don't know, but I would guess probably not enough time to train, and he'll probably put his best foot forward at the pro day. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on him. But yeah, he's and it's another interesting.
I wanted to see the show, Dane. I wanted to see the show. That's why I was asking you.
I'm telling you, I want to see a dunk contest at the combine. Make it happen. This guy, he's so much he can do, and I'm dreading is he a safety or corner debate that's coming.
Very exhausted.
It's going to be a topic, but it's kind of like what I said about like Fontenot. Like, it's not that he can't play tackle. That's not why I have him as a guard. And if DeJean does play safety, it's not because he can't play corner. It's just because
Right.
he might be the best tackling defensive back in his class, and the way he operates, his spatial awareness, it works really well as a safety. And so it's not that he can't play corner; it's just that he could be a really good safety as well. So, yeah, he's a good player.
I keep pounding the table sometimes about like certain teams that just need a DB. It's like, okay, let him be a safety your first year and move to outside corner if you need that. And you need a guy transition on it. If you need a slot, I just think he's awesome. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Nate Wiggins from Clemson.
So this is the guy that I struggle
This is interesting. Yeah. Cause you've kind of wavered about 14 spots, give or take, with him. So I'm curious.
Yeah.
What you feel about
I've been high on him all year.
Yeah.
And I still like him. It's just, he is, when you talk about corners and what you need size of the position, you need to be able to hold up physically. He's so slender and lean that now I've got it. Like, a scout mentioned this to me, and now I've got it in the back of my mind. Like, all right, yeah, he does play physical, but can he hold up? This is a guy that he missed 2 games this year with an injury. He missed time last year with a hip. Like, can he hold up physically? Being a guy that's 6'2", but a buck 85. But I do like a lot of the rest of what he offers. He's a young player. There's a lot. He's so sudden with his feet. Effort's not a question with him. It's just, does he have the body type to hold up physically? And it's not like I'm not going to draft him. It's just, okay, is he truly a top 20 player, or is he more of a top 30 player? So with Wiggins, he's a guy that I know I've gone back and forth a little bit on, and I'm sure I'll continue throughout the process.
Yeah, I'm at 18 right now, and I'm kind of the same thing. Just because, I'm curious what he measures in that, because you can see the twitchiness and ball skills and stuff like that. It's just like you say, it's how he holds up. The guy that was kind of CB1 for a lot of people to start the year, I think, including both of us, at least me, Kool-Aid McKinstry. You have him at 29 overall. Again, I'm right in the same range. I think I was in the low 30s with him. And then after that, it's kind of a little bit of a drop off into a whole kind of glutton of guys. But maybe of the glutton of guys, are there any that you want to highlight? I would say for me, just before I'll get my talking out of the way, and hopefully I get his name right, is Ennis Rakestraw from Mizzou. I ended up squeezing him in my, I believe, in my top 30. Yep, I had him at number 28. Really liked him. I got to watch a couple games, like some of the ball skills, like some of the movement stuff. So a guy I'm pretty interested in, but I'm curious about this other group of guys that you like, Dane.
Yeah, Rakestraw, I struggle with him. I think he's a good player. He's patient. He's controlled. He's got change of direction. I do like the movement skills. He's a very lean player, and so another guy, kind of like the Wiggins conversation. Yeah, right. I mean, I think I don't think he's I'll be interested to see what he runs at the combine. I don't know if
that's my thing. I'm kind of curious about too.
And at corner, it's kind of like, okay, I need 3 of the 4 things. I need, size, athleticism, smarts, and toughness. I need 3 of the 4. And, Trent McDuffie, not a big guy at all, short arms, but you know what? One of the smartest DBs I've ever talked to. Toughness is off the charts. Big time athlete. Okay, you give me 3 of the 4. I have no problem. He was like my 12th overall player in that draft. I loved him. No problem with him. But okay, if you're lacking on the size, you don't have the top tier speed, and you start to, if you don't have 3 of the 4, then doubt starts to creep in. And it doesn't mean you can't overcome that, but when you're trying to stack these guys and project them forward, there are some question marks. So I do like how aggressive he plays. He does put sticky coverage on film. It's just, I do think he's a starter, like a starting man cover guy in the NFL. Yeah. It's just the injury history is a concern. The build's a concern. So I don't have him quite as high as I know some other people will.
Yeah. You have, no, I think that's all very fair.
His teammate at Missouri, Chris Abrams-Drain, he did make the top 100 as well later on. But talk about a guy with ball production, double-digit passes defended each of the last 3 years. He played well at the Senior Bowl. So, yeah, wanted to make sure he got in there as well.
And yeah, I like when at the tail end guys. There was another guy that kind of has dropped off, Kalen King. He's at 84 overall now from Penn
Yeah,
State.
I don't know what
Yeah,
to do with him.
just don't play Marvin Harrison Jr. That is his number one thing. But yeah,
Even
he's
the
just.
Senior Bowl
I know
wasn't
Senior Bowl is rough.
great. Like it wasn't.
He's a cloud corner to me. Like I still think that
Yeah.
cover two, like where he can use his eyes a little bit. I'm still kind of that's where I
hmm
think he's best. I think he just has limitations when he has to be sticky. It's just he just kind of doesn't have that movement.
Cornerback is a volatile position, and I
Oh,
think he is Exhibit A.
yes.
Why it can be volatile. So he is a tough guy to kind of figure out exactly.
The one that always cracks me up is TJ Tampa because he's at Iowa State and they always play the Tampa too. So it's
There you
that
go.
one always just cracks me up too. Yeah, but no, it's an interesting corner class. I think there's plenty of talent. It's some cool flavors too.
hmm
Not so much safeties. Your first safety is Tower Newbin at 41. Again, this has kind of been hinted at in some of your mock drafts. You have Jaden Hicks at 43. That's kind of
hmm
well, it could be very close for you. Do you think as kind of safety 1 and 2 for you in this process?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's wish we could have seen Newbin at the Senior Bowl, but
Mm-hmm.
he didn't go. Be interested to see all these guys at the combine, see how they work out. It's not a great group of safeties, but I think on day two you can find some starters in there. So I think depending on what you're looking for, teams will be a little bit different with how they rank these guys.
Okay. Yeah, let's get to more fun one. All right. We'll go. Oh, shoot. Edge. All right, here we go. Defensive line. These because there's actually some guys here. Dallas Turner at 12. Okay. That is your edge one. I am in
Yeah.
agreement. That was the only I think I cracked him in the top 10 because it just felt so weird. I had him at 9. It just felt
Okay.
so weird to not have a defensive player. And I was like, all right, I'll give him a bump. But I really like him. I just think he's very, especially how defenses play right now, you can do a lot with them, especially the coverage stuff they do with them. I think that's really interesting. So,
He's a freaky athlete, and
yeah,
he can play the run. He can rush a passer,
he's
and
cool. Yeah, he's
he's
just a
still
cool player.
and he's
Yeah.
still getting better. Like he's still
Yeah.
figuring things out. So I think a team's gonna fall in love with him
Yeah.
and take him somewhere top 15. I think if you're making bets on who the first defensive player is gonna be, Terry and Arnold's the first on my board. And that's kind of probably where I would lean. But Dallas Turner's as good a bet as any.
Yeah, they're right there neck and neck for me as well. Jared Verse, right now, you have him over Leatu Latu from UCLA. Jared Verse
I,
being here for Florida State.
these
Or,
next three guys are kind of in a similar
and then
tier
Chop
for me.
Robinson, yes, at
Yeah,
26.
I would throw Chop in there too. It's just
Wild flavor differences here too, as well.
exactly
Yeah.
like Chop is very different than what Jared Verse gives you. Verse has the better floor in the NFL. Like
Mhm.
you know what Jared Verse is going to give you. Chop Robinson has a special trait. That first step explosiveness is special. He's not well rounded like Verse is, but do you opt for the special trait and figure out the rest, or do you want the more well-rounded player? So it's a philosophy question with these guys, and that and Latu. His lack of big time size and strength, I think, shows up at times, but he's so crafty with his hands.
Yeah.
He understands. Is so instinctive that I mean, he's a good player, even if he's not a top 10 type of prospect.
Have you compared him to John Wick this whole time?
Yeah,
Is that,
he's John Wick. He's not
I,
superhuman strength, superhuman athlete. He just has that killer instinct. That the skill part of it is just very unique for him. Yeah,
I went with a different Keanu Reeves movie, and that was The Matrix, where where
okay.
he learns kung fu and drunken boxing all at once. Like it's all like downloading, uploading. I was like, that's Latu in his hand usage. He just
I
knows all
like
the
it.
martial arts. He got upload by Tank.
All right, let's see how many Keanu movies we can compare guys to. So I got to find a speed reference in here somewhere.
Okay.
Maybe a
All right,
hardball. I don't know.
we got Darius Robinson from Mizzou, who is a Senior Bowl riser,
Yeah.
a guy that snuck up on people like the movie Constantine. If you ever want to check it out.
Oh gosh.
I'm reaching here. I'm reaching. All right. Well, I know you have to go. So we got the edges, defensive tackles. You have Byron Murphy at 15 overall. Keeps rising for you. Totally get it. Devondre Sweat, his teammates at 33 overall. Had a huge Senior Bowl, I know.
Yep.
And Jerzon Newton is at 30. I also like him, but I'm at 31 with him. Same exact thing. I think chip size limitations as well. Not really any linebackers to speak of. I believe we have the same linebacker one, which way to go us. Junior Colson. You have 39. I had him 40. I snuck him into my top 40 because I had to get a linebacker in there. And then, of course, you have Edgerrin Cooper at 42. But plenty of these guys to talk about. Any that you want, the Texas guys to start off, maybe just to wrap up the show?
Yeah, Byron Murphy. I mean, he's versus a run versus a pass. You know, he can do it all. And I think I surprised some people when he was 16 overall in my mock draft, but he deserves it. He might not make it to 16 overall. He is that type of player. And then Junior Colson at linebacker. I mean, he is how tough he is. He's an athlete. He can do it all. So yeah, I think he's deserving of that top linebacker spot.
Yeah, I'm comparing him to like a kind of the same play style as Nick Bolton a little bit. Kind of does a lot of things nice, yeah. Well, different, a little bit different body type, but that was the guy I ended up with. But that kind of speaks to the linebacker class. That's what he is. But thank you so much to Dane. I think we went over about 80% of that top 100, but please make sure to check it out on The Athletic right now. Dane's top 100. My top 40 is over at Yahoo. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to Dane again for all of his time. Thank you guys so much for checking this out. We will be here every single week. Robert will start joining us soon, and we'll get the 3-man weave going once this giant draft process gets really, really ramped up after the combine. But make sure to check out all our combine stuff coming soon. See you guys next time.